Let me ask you something. What would happen if for just 1 week you stopped caring about things that drain you? What if you stopped explaining yourself, stopped obsessing over who likes you, and quit trying to be everything to everyone? You've been holding on to things that are pulling you down, and you know it. The problem isn't always that your life is too heavy. The problem is you're carrying too much that was never yours to hold. So today we're going to talk about something that may just set you free. The less you care, the happier you get. And it's not about apathy. It's about power, peace, and purpose. When you hear the phrase emotional detachment, it might sound negative at first. You might think it means being cold, disconnected, or distant. But the truth is, emotional detachment is one of the most powerful tools you'll ever develop if you learn how to use it the right way. It's not about shutting down emotionally. It's not about becoming numb or unavailable. It's about reclaiming your mental real estate. It's about choosing what deserves your emotional energy and what doesn't. Every single day you're in a constant battle for your focus, your peace, and your happiness. And the more emotionally invested you are in the wrong things, the more drained, frustrated, and confused you become. We live in a world that promotes emotional entanglement. You're expected to care about every comment, every post, every little thing someone says or doesn't say. But emotional detachment is what keeps you grounded when the world gets chaotic. It's what allows you to say, this situation is not worth my stress, or their opinion doesn't define my value. It's not about indifference. It's about intentional care. It's about saying, I choose not to let this control me. Emotional detachment helps you create distance between you and your triggers. That distance is not denial. It's clarity. You can look at a problem, a person, or a painful moment and decide whether it deserves your energy or whether it's just trying to hijack your attention. That kind of power doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you wise. Because the truth is, not everything requires your reaction. Not every insult needs a comeback. Not every argument needs to be won. Not every invitation to drama deserves an RSVP. Detachment is the art of knowing when to engage and when to protect your peace. Think about how much time and energy you've spent worrying about people who've already moved on, obsessing over outcomes you can't control, or playing mental chess with scenarios that may never happen. That cycle is exhausting, and it's not noble. It's self-abandonment. It's giving pieces of yourself away to things that don't nourish you. Emotional detachment steps in and says, not today. It helps you stay centered in a world that constantly tries to knock you off balance. Caring too much about what people think is one of the most silent forms of self-betrayal. You wake up each day with this inner pressure pulling the strings in the background. It's in the way you choose your words so carefully, the way you overanalyze a comment about your appearance, or how you hold back your real opinion just to keep the peace. You think you're being kind or mature, but what you're really doing is negotiating your identity in exchange for temporary acceptance. That's a dangerous trade. The constant need for approval is exhausting because it can never be fully satisfied. You could have 10 people compliment you, but one person questions you, and suddenly all your confidence disappears. Why? Because your worth wasn't rooted in truth. It was hanging by the thread of someone else's opinion. This is what happens when your emotional thermostat is controlled by the reactions of other people. You're up when they're pleased. You're down when they're distant, and most of the time you don't even realize it's happening. Living for validation is like walking on a tightrope. Every step is calculated. You're always balancing, guessing, and adjusting to what you think other people want you to be. You change into what feels acceptable in each room with each person. And before long, you forget what you actually believe, what you actually want, or who you really are. That's not life. That's survival. That's emotional slavery. The people around you are not your measuring stick. You don't need them to cheer for you in order to move forward. You don't need them to understand your path in order for it to be the right one. The day you stop living for applause is the day you start living in freedom. Because when you no longer need to be liked, you are free to be real. And real is where confidence is born. It becomes a problem when external support, recognition, or affirmation becomes your source, your lifeline. Because what happens when they stop? If your identity was built on their approval, their disapproval will destroy you. That's why detachment matters. Not coldness, not bitterness, but healthy emotional detachment. The mindset that says, I can appreciate your feedback, but I won't let it define me. People-pleasing sounds kind, compassionate, and like love. But what it really is deep down is self-abandonment. The smiling when you're exhausted. The saying yes when your whole soul is screaming no. It's putting other people's comfort above your own truth again and again until eventually you forget what your truth even is. People-pleasing is a silent destroyer of self-worth. Every time you betray yourself to avoid disappointing someone else, you reinforce the belief that your needs, your voice, and your peace matter less. And if you do that long enough, it starts to show in your anxiety, your resentment, and that low, aching sense of burnout you carry everywhere. You cannot live a happy, empowered life while constantly shrinking to fit into someone else's mold. You can't keep saying yes to things that hurt you just because you're afraid of being seen as difficult. You can't keep tiptoeing through life hoping not to offend anyone while your own soul is suffocating from the silence. People-pleasing is not love. Love doesn't ask you to betray yourself. You weren't created to live under the weight of constant judgment. You were created to live out loud, to grow, to take up space. But that only happens when you stop letting external opinions silence your voice. The moment you care less, you start living more. And that's where happiness begins.